I think as we all know, the status is that it is quite fragmented. Your chain UX is pretty much not there. Liquidity is fragmented across chains. And we can easily see this as soon as we go on something like L2 beat. We have lots of L2s, we have lots of L3s, and we have lots of bridges, right? And we have new rollups, new side chains, new Validiums kind of joining the foray every day. Literally probably like one a day, one a month, who knows, right? And while this is great for adoption, because this means that people are motivated to actually go out and build good products for people that people love, what this also means is that it hampers the actual UX that users get when they're actually using one of these chains. So let's talk about a typical cross-chain bridging experience today, right? Let's say you want to just go from a chain like Optimism to a chain like Arbitrum or even Base. You lock your assets in Optimism and then you mint them on Arbitrum. And then let's say you have to go back, then you again burn those same assets, the very same assets, and you are able to unlock them in Optimism. And while this is great for security because you exactly know how the bridges function, it's essentially a lock and mint bridge. What it doesn't mean is the user has a good experience while, let's say, transferring tokens or transferring NFTs. Today, I think the primary paradigm of these two is either going to be intents or messages. And both have their own flaws and both kind of tackle it in different ways, some with solvers, some with relayers. And although it works, none of this actually provides users the actual experience that something that we as an industry should kind of strive to offer. So kind of, we can, if we have to draw a corollary to how it works in Web2 today, you can kind of think of, you go to Amazon, you want to buy, let's say GTA 6, right? You're like really excited to buy it. You go to PayPal, you put your card in there, and behind, just in the background, Visa will just settle the transaction for you. PayPal processes it, tells Amazon it's done, and then good to go, your video game is going to come to you in 3 to 5 days. And unfortunately, this is not the truth that we have today. So what we want to consider for a minute or two is a very specialized use case here, right? We want to imagine an ideal world. So let's imagine that you have an NFT marketplace chain which only tracks NFT ownership. Think of this as an OpenSea chain, for example. And on the other side, you have a payment chain that only tracks account balances. This can be something like your everyday chain, like Polygon or Base or Arbitrum, right? It doesn't really matter what it is. And so now let's say you as a user are very excited to purchase this Bored Ape Yacht Club, like you need it hot off the market. And of course, where will you get it? You will get it on the OpenSea chain. So you place your trade on this NFT marketplace chain. And in this ideal world, for you, it's as simple as you go click on the buy button. You go to your payment provider. This can be your typical wallet. It can be MetaMask. It can be your 2PC MPC wallets. It can be literally anything that wants to act as a payment provider. And right as you do it, once your payment is done, you go back to your OpenSea chain, you go back to your marketplace, and you get your NFT. Now, this is exactly how e-commerce transactions work today, where you have cross-chain communication happening at scale, if you have to compare it to a blockchain comparison, so to say. And I guess now is a good time to ask, like, how do we do it, right? Like, because if we see the paradigm today, it's just not feasible, it's just not possible at scale. And this is kind of where we bring in Avail Nexus, or actually to be even more simpler, just Avail, because Nexus just comes built in. Now, what do we mean by Nexus, right? What we kind of want to define it as is a trust-optimized roll-up interop solution. And what this is going to be a precursor to chain abstraction. So think of it as the base layer for something like the chain abstraction layers of today, like Socket, like Jumper, like Everclear. All of them can kind of leverage this particular layer that we will have on Avail, and they can have all of this cross-chain interop happen pretty much seamlessly. So now to kind of talk a bit about what Avail Nexus is going to be, it's effectively a permissionless interop protocol that actually unifies rollups by enabling communication at scale. And again, when we talk about at scale, we're talking about between rollups or even between sidechains, and it's happening probably hundreds of rollups, thousands of rollups, 10,000s of rollups in the future. And kind of the primary features that we target here, and this is going to be a core part of Avail as well as Avail Nexus going forward, is going to be something called asynchronous composability. Now, what does this exactly entail? Effectively, what it boils down to is that any intent that you make, any transaction that you make, any message that you send over can be executed in an async context. It can be executed n number of seconds into the future. It can be executed at some point, whatever the user kind of wants it to be defined. So it makes it very granular. It gives up control to the user such that the developers can optimize their solution for the best outcomes. And in this nexus for as well, we essentially provide two paths. One is going to be the optimistic fast path. This is going to be for your high volume, high security assets. And then we have a validity proven slow path, which is going to be for your long tail assets, for interactions between, let's say, untrusted rollups or unauthorized rollups, where you cannot really trust the other chain. And I think the most exciting part about Avail Nexus, of course, is that all of this is going to be secured by Avail DA. And again, like, we are not in the business of building walled gardens here. What that means is that if today rollups want to use Nexus, they can just use Nexus. If they want to use Avail DA, they can just use Avail DA. It's entirely opt-in, because that's how things that we build in this particular space should be. People and developers should have a choice to build on the exact solutions that they want to pick and choose. So now I think we can kind of talk about what secures rollups today. Primarily, all rollups have two components that need to be verified, right? One is going to be data availability, which is going to be Avail DA, and the second is going to be execution. And execution proofs typically come in two forms today. One is going to be fraud proofs, which chains like Base, Arbitrum probably have in production today. And then validity proofs, which are essentially, we call them ZK proofs, which is a less inaccurate term. But that's going to be your ZK EVM, that's going to be your CDK chains, and for example, even ZK Sync Era. And what kind of all of this means is that without the DA guarantees from a DA layer like Avail, rollups are effectively not secure. Because either the safety or the liveness property of rollups or chains today have to be violated if we have to do it without DA guarantees. So if you look at the cross-chain interop structure as it is today, effectively what that entails is you run a full node of every chain that you're interacting with. Maybe LCs if your chain supports LCs. But the fact of the matter is that if today you're a solver, if today you're a filler, or if today you're a relayer, you effectively have to run a full node of the chain where you're kind of passing the message to and fro. So whether it be chain 1, chain 2, chain 3, whatever chains that you want to support, you're going to have to run a full node for each and every chain. And while this might work great for your two-chain solution, as soon as we have a world today where we have probably thousands of rollups, this is something that is impossible to do at scale. And that is kind of what we want to solve with Avail Nexus. So with Avail Nexus, for even rollup users, and even rollup sequencers, it's as simple as running the Avail LC. You run your particular ZK stack chain, you run your CDK chain, you run your Starknet chain. Effectively, what it means is that when you have an Avail LC running, and your Avail LC is actually verifying the state of the chain using data availability sampling, as well as the guarantees that you derive from Nexus, you can have almost seamless interop between these chains happening at scale. And this is kind of where we tackle one aspect of Nexus, which we call contingent execution or contingent transactions. In fact, this is the exact thing that I showed you in the earlier NFT demo, so to say, where for a user, it's as simple as on the OpenSea chain, you reserve your NFT, you make your payment on the payment chain, Nexus verifies the payment inclusion, Nexus then sends over a payment inclusion or non-inclusion proof to the NFT chain, and you as a user effectively will just get to know from the OpenSea chain, is it cancelled or is it confirmed? And that's pretty much it. And again, when we talk about this particular contingent transaction example, we can kind of see this using proof aggregation. We can see this happening across thousands of rollups with not much latency. And that is kind of the exact solution that we want to tackle with in terms of solving chain UX as it is today. Because at Avail, our goal has always been making chains modular and about making these modular chains unified. Because if you run a rollup today, you have so many choices, right? You can pick your own execution layer, you can pick your own consensus layer, you can pick your own DA layer. And let's assume that we have a certain number of modular chains, whether it be running CDK, whether it be running ZK Stack or Starknet. What it means is that as long as you're on Avail, which has DA, Fusion, and Nexus available inside and available for rollup users to use, and you just run the light client. Some of them can even be white labeled for a particular rollup, for example. What it just means is that it just works, and your chain is part of the Avail ecosystem to kind of share with the liquidity of other chains as a whole. So if you remember this Amazon experience from earlier, where you sort of just checked out your particular video game from Amazon, your PayPal just processed it, and Visa card just settled it. We can have a very similar corollary to that in Web3 as well, where you just buy your NFT or BAYC from OpenSea, your Avail chain, Avail Nexus acts as a processing layer, and you send your USDC on Polygon, and then you just receive your NFT, and that's pretty much it. And that's kind of the world we envision, right? Where you don't really need to worry about where your assets are, about where your NFTs are. As long as you have a particular intent in mind, a particular idea about what you want to do, it just happens. And that is what Avail Nexus is going to enable in the very near future. And that's kind of it from me. Honestly, very happy to talk to Avail about all of you. If you want to reach out to me, please do it via Twitter or Telegram or anywhere. We are actively hiring. You can go on our website. You can find us. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, let's unify blockchains.